Good morning, students. Welcome back to the English online classes. As you people know, already I have taken videos regarding chapter 3 from your Flamingo book, Deep Water, in which we people have come across the experience of William Douglas about how he was about to drown in the swimming pool. In this chapter, which is an autobiography by him, in this, he spoke about his fear, his aversion of water, and he also spoke about how he tried to overcome it. Basically, when we people have seen the chapter, we have seen that he had a very bad experience when he was just 3 or 4 years old, when with his father he went to the California beach and where he was knocked down by a heavy tide, and because of that reason he developed a dislike for water, which worsened up even more because of the misadventure which took place with him when he was just 10 or 11 years old in the YMCA pool. There one day, when he was sitting down by the poolside waiting for others to come because he was frightened to go all alone in the water, a bruiser kind of a boy came there and he picked him up and tossed him to the deeper end, which was about 9 feet deep, out of just the fact that he wanted to bully this small boy. But when he picked him up and tossed him into the deeper end, what happened with this boy, that is the most important thing. The boy who don't even know how to swim, who was just a beginner, he started going down in the sitting position itself, swallowing a lot of water and frightened like anything. But still, he stayed in his senses, and he planned out a strategy that the moment his feet touches the bottom of the pool, he will give his body a jump and his body will come up like a cork, lie flat on the surface of the water, and then he can pedal and move to the edge of the pool. First time when he went down, he had decided this plan, and according to that, though his lungs were filled up, he had swallowed a lot of water, but still he was wide awake with the fact that he has to fight. And then he just, the moment his feet touched the bottom of the pool, he gave himself a big push and he came out, but not the way how he imagined it to be. And when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing but water around him. His eyes and nose came out, but not his mouth. He started panicking. He got frightened. He moved his hand to clutch something, to hold on to something, but he could get nothing but water in his hand. And then he started his journey back to the bottom of the pool for the second time. And while he was going down, he wanted to move his legs. He wanted to bring his legs up, but they hung dead, paralyzed, rigid, stiff, like out of his control. Then he kept on hitting the water out of his fear, and his lungs ached, his head throbbed. He felt like as if he was a dead log in the water, but still the throbbing of his head and the pounding of his heart just told him that he was still alive. But he says that it was something which he cannot explain and which other person cannot feel until and unless he or she experience herself or himself. And then while he made the next second jump of his, the moment it touched the tiled bottom, he found that the speed has decreased and very slowly he was going up. Okay, but still he reached to the top. Yellow light could be seen. His nose was outside almost, and eyes definitely. But then, before anything else could happen, he started his third journey down to the bottom of the pool. And slowly, he started sucking a lot of air. Air in the sense that he thought he's sucking air, but what he was actually sucking was water. And the yellowish light was also going out of sight. Now let's continue with the rest of the part. Then all effort ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, and a blackness swept over my brain. It It wiped out fear, it wiped out terror. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice. To be drowsy, to go to sleep, no need to jump, too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently, to float along in space. Tender arms around me, tender arms like mothers. Now I must go to sleep. I crossed to oblivion, and the curtain of life fell. You know, my dear students, this is what happens. You may fight and fight, but at one particular point, when you feel that your fight makes no sense, actually we lose our hope and we drop down our weapons. Here also same thing happened. In the first attempt, he was full of energy. Second, it started like he hoped that he can come out. But when third time he started going down the bottom of the pool, he could not take any longer. My dear students, he was just 10 years old. Okay, maximum 11 years old, but still a child. So what happened? When he felt that he cannot do anything, he stopped his efforts and he let his body relax. It became, his legs felt limp, means like no senses at all. And a blackness swept over his brain, means his brain was not supporting him, it was not working, what to do next. But one thing was there, that fear of drowning, the fear of dying, it got wiped off. See, what was the actual fear? The actual fear was that I'm going to die. But when he found that now all his efforts are worthless, that fear also got disappeared from there. And fear disappeared, terror also disappeared. Now he was no more panicking. He was very quiet and peaceful. He was not afraid of anything. And then he felt drowsy, like sleepy, and he was happy. Now he don't have to think about jumping, he don't have to think about coming out. It was like he was tired of it. And he was floating in the water. And he felt like he was somewhere in the space, and the water felt like tender arms around him, arms like that of mother. And now he felt, I must go to sleep. And he already believed that he had reached to that end of his journey. He has crossed to oblivion, that place where his life journey is coming to an end, and the curtain of his life is going to fall. But whether it actually happened in that way, that we have to see. The next I remember, I was lying on my stomach beside the pool, vomiting. The chap that threw me in was saying, but I was only fooling. Someone said, the kid nearly died. Be alright now, let's carry him to the locker room. Several hours later, I walked home. I was weak and trembling. I shook and cried when I lay on my bed. I couldn't eat that night. For days, a haunting fear was in my heart. The slightest exertion upset me, making me wobbly in the knees and sick to my stomach. When he thought everything has come to an end, his life has come to an end, suddenly he remembered the next thing, that he was lying on his stomach by the edge of the pool and he was vomiting. And the person, you remember that 18-year-old boy, he was talking to somebody else and he was giving an excuse that he has done it out all of just joke. He was just kidding. So the other person scolded him that the kid might have died, and then he asked him to carry him to the locker room. Locker room, all of you know what a locker room is. In maximum of the clubs and all, locker rooms are there where people keep their personal belongings before going for swimming or spa or any of those kind of things. Then he says that after several hours, immediately he could not go home, but after several hours he walked back and he was feeling terribly weak and he was trembling not out of weakness, that feeling that he was about to drown, he was about to die, that could not be wiped off so easily, that was there lingering to him, and that made him quiver, tremble. When he was lying on the bed, he was shaking and crying. He could not eat that night, and for days that fear of that experience of drowning in the water, the experience of struggle that he passed through, it was there haunting him for days. And then whenever he used to do little work also, which used to exert him in any way, his knees used to wobble, it used to shake, and he used to feel sick in his stomach. Means like sick in the stomach in the sense that he feels like as if though he's terribly sickly and he feel like vomiting or his stomach aches, means not feeling good, no, that kind. I never went back to the pool. I feared water. I avoided it whenever I could. A few years later, when I came to know the waters of the Cascades, I wanted to get into them. And whenever I did, whether I was wading the Titan or bumping river or bathing in warm lake of the goat rocks, the terror that had seized me in the pool would come back. It would take possession of me completely. My legs would become paralyzed. Icy horror would grab my heart. Okay, after that, he never turned back towards the swimming pool. He feared water so much that he used to avoid going near the water. Few years went like that, but then when he saw the cascades in the sense that jharna, waterfall, when he looked at the waters of the cascade, he wanted to go into them. And whenever he tried doing it, like going into the Titan or bumping river or bathing in the warm lake of the goat rocks, the terror which he had suffered or he has gone through because of that incident of IMCA pool used to come back and catch him. It used to take complete possession of him, and his legs used to get paralyzed. And icy horror means when your body turns totally cold out of fright. And icy horror used to grab his heart. This handicap stayed with me as the years rolled by. In Knas on main lakes fishing for landlocked salmon, bass fishing in New Hampshire, trout fishing on the estuaries, and Metolius in Oregon, fishing for salmon on the Columbia, at Bumping Lake in the Cascades. Wherever I went, the haunting fear of the water followed me. It ruined my fishing trips, deprived me of the joy of canoeing, boating, and swimming. See this line. The handicap stayed with me as the years rolled by. You know what's the handicap over here? I think till now you people might have been thinking handicap means someone who is deaf, dumb, or limping, or something of that sort. Handicap means something which prohibits you or which makes you senseless or fills you with fear from doing it. Here his fear was for water. And because of that, a lot of things he got deprived of, like going for fishing or for canoeing. You know what are canoes? Rowing on the boat where only one person can sit down and you can go into the surf of the water. Then boating, swimming. So basically he found that this haunting fear or this fear or aversion or dislike to water followed him everywhere, and it spoiled his joy of water sports. Now what to do? So he took a decision. Let's see what he did. I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor and learn to swim. I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. The instructor put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran on an overhead cable. He held on to the end of the rope, and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. On each trip across the pool, a bit of the panic seized me. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope and I went under. Some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. It was 3 months before the tension began to slack. Then he taught me to put my face under water and exhale, and to raise my nose and inhale. I repeated the exercise hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went underwater. Okay, now this is what he decided. He found that he loved water sports and he hated water. Now, what to do? So he decided he need to overcome this fear. For that, he decided to get an instructor to learn swimming. This happened somewhere in October. He hired one instructor, and along with the instructor, he went to the pool. And there he used to practice 5 days a week, an hour each day. Now, what the instructor used to do? The instructor, he put a belt around his waist. Okay, and then that belt had a rope which used to run over a pulley which ran on an overhead cable. Means you just imagine a swimming pool in which an overhead cable, a cable is running over the pool, and in the pool a pulley is there. You know what is a pulley? You might have seen people drawing water out of the well. Yeah, correct. That is a pulley. And on top of that pulley, one rope is running, and one end of the rope is tied to the belt which is attached or which is around the narrator's waist, and the other end of the rope is held by the instructor. And holding that rope, he used to let the instructor go back and forth in the pool. And while he used to go, this they used to practice hour after hour, day after day, week after week. While they used to practice, sometimes whenever the instructor used to leave the hold little loose, our narrator used to go inside the water. And the moment he used to go inside the water, that same old terror used to come and capsize him. And his legs used to turn icy cold, frozen. This continued for 3 months. It took 3 months for that tension to slowly ease away. Slack means to disappear, to ease down, to calm down. And then he taught him how to inhale and exhale. Very important part in swimming. That how to do it. How to put the face under the water and exhale, and how to raise the face out and through nose to inhale the air. This is very important aspect of swimming. So when this one was taught to him, he practiced this hundreds of times. Hundreds of times the narrator practiced this inhaling and exhaling. And slowly, part by part, that panic, that terror, that fright started ceasing. And whenever his head went into the water, now the terror percentage has decreased to a great extent. Next, he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick with my legs. For weeks I did just that. At first my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed and finally I could command them. Thus, piece by piece, he built a swimmer. And when he had perfected each piece, he put them together into an integrated whole. In April, he said, "Now you can swim. Dive off and swim the length of the pool. Crawl, stroke." First what he did? He tied the belt across him. Then with the rope running over the pulley, he made the narrator go back and forth in the same place in the water, and he used to leave the rope loose which he used to hold at one end, and the narrator used to panic, but slowly he overcome that panic. Then he taught the narrator how to exhale and inhale. After this, the next step he did was to caught hold of the side of the pool and to kick his legs. For weeks He did just that. At first, what happened, his legs used to refuse, frozen leg. But then slowly, gradually it relaxed, and finally, our narrator could command his legs. The next part, a very beautiful line. Piece by piece, he built a swimmer. Yes, correct. Not immediately he learned swimming. First back and forth movement at one place, then inhaling, exhaling, then kicking up the legs. So slowly, piece by piece, he built a swimmer. And when he saw that the narrator has perfected every piece, he had practiced and brought perfection in every piece, he brought all the pieces together and he created an integrated swimmer out of him. And then in April, October the lesson started. Then in April, around some 7 to 8 months passed. He said to the narrator, go, dive across the pool and swim the length of the pool, crawl stroke. You know that various types of strokes are there in swimming, butterfly, crow, crawl, breast, all kind of strokes are there. He said that, come on, swim across the pool. He did. Now the further part is the most important one to see. I did. The instructor was finished, but I was not finished. I still wonder if I would be terror-stricken when I was alone in the pool. I tried it. I swam the length up and down. Tiny vestiges of the old terror would return. But now I could frown and say to that terror, trying to scare me, yeah? Well, here's to you. Look, and off I would go for another length of the pool. It was like a victory for our narrator. When the instructor said that I had completed my work, now you just dive and swim across the length of the pool, our narrator did it, and the instructor's work finished there. But narrator, he was not satisfied. He was not yet finished. He wanted to check. Till now, instructor used to stand there. He wanted to check. If no one is there around and he goes into the pool, whether the terror still exists. He tried it. He swam across the length of the pool, up and down. And whenever this tiny vestiges of old terror, means small miniature sized terror used to come back, our narrator used to frown and say to that terror, you came here to terrorize me? Come on, let me show you. And then he used to go another length of the pool. Okay, so swimming pool terror was over. This went on until July, but I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all the terror had left, so I went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke and backstroke. Only once did the terror return. When I was in the middle of the lake, I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned in miniature. I laughed and said, well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me? It fled and I swam on. So my dear students, from April to July, he tried his all kind of facts in the swimming pool, and he reached to the conclusion that yes, he was no longer frightened to go into the pool. This went on, but he was not satisfied. He wanted to check out whether the terror had really left him or not. So now from the pool, he came to the wider areas. He went to Lake Wentworth, and then he swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. He dived off from the dock at Triggs Island and swam 2 miles across to lake to Stamp Act Island. He tried every kind of strokes, like as mentioned over here, crawl, breast, side, back. And once the terror returned, you know, when he went little deeper into the water and the bottom seems to be endless. You know how it is. When you go into the water, you cannot see the other end of that. So that's why it has been said the bottomless water. And then he felt as if though that old terror was coming back. But then he laughed at it and he said, "What do you think you can do to me, Mr. Terror?" And then the terror fled away and he swam peacefully. Yet I had residual doubts. At my first opportunity, I hurried west, went up to the Titan to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Meade Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of Warm Lake. The next morning, I stripped, dived into the lake, and swam across to the other shore and back, just as Doc Corporon used to do. I shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned the echo. I had conquered my fear of water. Okay, after 2.5 months of practice in the pool and after swimming 2 miles across the lake, he was not satisfied. Still residual doubts, means little bit of doubts were still left in his mind, and he wanted to clear off that. So he went and he camped in a high meadow by the side of the Warm Lake, and the next morning he stripped himself, means he took off his clothes, dived into the lake and swam across to the other shore and back, just as one person mentioned over here, Doc Corporon, did. And he was filled with joy. He stood at the Gilbert Peak on his return and shouted from there, and the peak returned the echo of his happiness. Finally, he has conquered his fear of water. The experience had a deep meaning for me, as only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can appreciate. In death, there is peace. There is terror only in the fear of death. Beautiful line. Truth, fact. As Roosevelt knew when he said, "All we have to fear is fear itself," because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce. The will to live somehow grew in intensity. At last I felt released, free to walk the trails and climb the peaks and to brush aside fear. Now this experience of shouting out of joy and the echo definitely had a very deep meaning which maybe none of us can understand. Only the people who have undergone any of such experience where terror, dark terror, has conquered can appreciate it. And it is very truthful fact. If a person die, there is nothing to fear in it, because there is no experience, no feelings after death. It is totally peaceful. Actually, the terror is in facing the fear of death. That's what Roosevelt said, the president. All we have to fear is fear itself. Yes, that's true. Actually, like if anyone is fearful of height, actually you are not supposed to be fearful of height. You should be fearful of the fact that if you fall from that height, what will happen? That is the actual fear. That fear. And because our narrator had experienced two things, sensation of dying and the terror that fear produced, the willingness to live and enjoy life has grown to an intensity inside him. And he says that now after all this thing he feels very released, means like as if nothing is catching him up and keeping, and he is free to walk about in the trails, climb the peaks, and his fear is totally subsided, totally finished, erased, totally deleted from his life. So my dear students, this is what this chapter imparts to us. Fear will be there in everyone's life for something or the other. The most important thing is that we must not live with that fear, but we must try to overcome the fear. And that is what is actual victory. Now coming to the questions which are given in the boxes, let's see. The first question which is given over here is, what is the misadventure that William Douglas speaks about? Remember, my dear students, you are not supposed to write in this about his experience as a 3 or 4-year-old child. You have to speak about, in short, his experience as a 10-year-old child of the YMCA pool. where he was tossed to the deeper end of the pool by the 18-year-old British boy, and how he suffered and struggled to come out of the pool. What were the series of emotion and fears that Douglas experienced when he was thrown into the pool? What plans did he make to come to the surface? Now, here two parts are there, series of emotions and fears. For that, my dear students, you will have to go through the second page and the third page of your textbook, where you'll come across emotions and feelings like being frightened, panicking, stark fear seizing, lungs ached. All these kind of expressions and phrases which are given over there very well expresses the feelings and emotions and fears of Douglas. So you have to pick out all those phrases and use it for mentioning the series of emotions and fears that Douglas experienced. Coming to the second part, what plans did he make to come to the surface? You remember the strategy this small boy made? Whenever his feet touch the bottom of the pool, he will give his body a push. He will come out like a cork, lie flat on the surface of the water, and he will pedal to the edge of the pool. Next one. Question number 3, how did his experience affect him? How did this experience affect him? Means we have to speak about when he had been taken out from the pool. Yeah, it is right over there. You can see he walked back home. He was weak and he was trembling. He shook and cried while lying on the bed. He could not eat for days. Haunting fear was there in his heart. At slight exertion, his knees used to wobble and he used to feel sick in his stomach. All these things you have to write down for this third question. As I have told you people, I will be discussing and telling you the points, but answers you have to prepare on your own, because you have to be so well prepared and so much self-prepared that you can create and you can prepare any kind of answer when it is coming in the board examination. Coming to the next one. At the end of the chapter, one box is there in which the first question given is, why was Douglas determined to get over his fear of water? What was the reason that he wanted to get over it? The reason is very clearly been given in the book, that he loved fishing, canoeing, bathing, swimming, everything which was related to water. And because of that reason, he wanted at any cost to get over the fear of water. Next one is, how did the instructor build the swimmer out of Douglas? Many times this question has appeared in the board examination. It had been there in the examination. Now, how did the instructor build a swimmer out of Douglas? That full paragraph which is given over there, in which tying the belt across him, then using the pulley and the rope over the pulley, and then back and forth movement, then inhaling and exhaling, then catching hold of the edge of the pool, kicking with the legs. This way, piece by piece, he built a swimmer out of Douglas. This question can come for 30 to 40, in which you have to compress your answer, and if it comes for long answer, obviously you have to elaborate the entire process. How did Douglas make sure that he conquered the old terror? Here you have to write about how he practiced in the pool, then how he went to Lake Wentworth, then how, when residual doubt was there, how he went to the Titan to Conrad Meadows, and from there how he had dived into the lake and swam across to the other shore. All these names have to be mentioned over here to tell that how he has completely checked whether the fear has left him or not. Coming to understanding the text. How does Douglas make clear to the reader the sense of panic that gripped him as he almost drowned? Describe the details that have made the description vivid. Here you have to use the very third page, in which everything is mentioned very clearly, in which it is given that how his legs felt paralyzed, rigid, and how his head throbbed, how he tried to catch hold of something in the water, but he got nothing in his hand, how he turned panicking, he was filled with fright, his lungs got filled with what he felt like it is going to burst, he swallowed a lot of water. All these kind of incidents are given over there, all kind of lines are there which very clearly tells about his sense of panic, fright, and you have to use that. Second question is, how did Douglas overcome his fear of water? The same, that is how the instructor built a swimmer out of Douglas. Now in this question you have to give a vivid description of how he built a swimmer out of Douglas, a long answer. Third one is, why does Douglas as an adult recount a childhood experience of terror and his conquering of it? What larger meaning does it draw from this experience? Here it is actually your own point of view. You have to write down about how it is very important for every person in this world to overcome fear. Every one of us has fear for something or the other. We all possess that. And it is very important to overcome it. Then after you overcome it, in the context of the story, Douglas, he spoke and he said to us that because he had been an experienced person between dying and the struggle for living, he knows the value of life, the intensity of living, and he felt that after coming out of this experience, this experience taught him to fight and overcome his fear, and after he overcome this fear, he felt his life to be more beautiful. So these are the questions, and after this I'll be giving you the PDF of the last spring as well as the deep water. You will be receiving it very soon, and I hope, my dear students, that you people are keeping yourself well updated with all the videos and the lessons that I've got over till now, because as you know, after the reopening, these lessons will not be taken again, so you have to learn through this. Till then, goodbye, take care.